Aloha and thank you for joining CES Clarity Number Next List training. Here's our agenda for today's session. I'm going to first do an overview of the number next list. So the purpose of the number next list, learning how to access the number next list, familiarizing yourself with the number next list columns, and learning how to filter the number next list to only see the clients that you're working with. The second topic will be an overview of the number next list case conferencing assessment. I'll cover why it's useful, how to access it in Clarity, and how often it should be updated. So going right into topic number 1, an overview of the number next list. So what is the purpose of the number next list? Number next gives a snapshot of households who are number next or next up for a referral to a housing program through CES. What determines who's next is based on the priority order that has been agreed upon by the continuum of care. If you have any questions about priority order, please reach out to the CES team and we'll point you to our policies and procedures document, which outlines the full prioritization matrix. Number next list meetings are held by CES for the purpose of pre-referral navigation and focus on prepping upcoming households for housing. These lists are broken out by each subpopulation, so there will be a list for individuals, for adult-only households, families with minor children, youth ages 18 to 24, and veterans. The goal of Number Next is to ensure that the prioritized housing pathway is appropriate and that the household is prepared for placement if and when a referral is made. With this in mind, the Number Next List meetings are designed to collect the following information. First is client engagement. So we'll be asking if the person is currently engaged, where they're located, or if maybe they're missing and need to be on hold for a referral through CES. Next is appropriate housing resource. So is that household appropriate for transitional housing, rapid rehousing, or permanent supportive housing? Next is document readiness. So CES will look in the Clarity system and verify documents such as identification documents, but we're primarily looking for chronic homeless verification and disability verification. The reason for this is chronic homeless verification is a requirement for PSH program eligibility. CES goes into Clarity and verifies these packets before making referrals to PSH programs, so it is imperative that they're completed if you have households who need that resource. The reason why CES verifies the packet ahead of making a referral is to hopefully make housing navigation quicker for those housing programs so they can focus less on document collection once they receive a referral. Last here are barriers and next steps. So any barriers that that person or family has to housing and any next steps that you and the client are working on to hopefully break those barriers down. So now that I've given an overview of the Number Next List, if you've been participating in CES Number Next List meetings up until our switch to Clarity, you might be wondering what has changed. So the Number Next List now lives in Clarity. Changes made in HMIS will be reflected in real time on the Number Next List. Client updates will be provider driven through what is called the Number Next List assessment, which will be covered later in today's training. So you may remember on the Google Sheet version of the Number Next List, CES would manually update the columns during those meetings in real time. We would also have to manually add households to the list in Google Sheets every other week or so. Now the updates are going to be made automatically through this assessment and through completion of VI SPDAT and a few other steps, which I'll get into in just a moment. So clients will only appear on the Number Next List if they meet all of the following requirements. Number 1, they must be actively enrolled in the Coordinated Entry Program enrollment and have a VI SPDAT assessment completed within the last year and be referred to the community queue. So please note, the VI SPDAT assessment must be entered under an active Coordinated Entry enrollment. If the VI SPDAT assessment is entered in a closed coordinated entry enrollment that has an exit date, the client will not appear on the number next list. So if you have already done the VI SPDAT training with Josh Roach on the HMIS team, you should already be doing this workflow. And if you don't see a client on the number next list who you believe should be there, please just make sure that you followed all 3 of these steps. And the HMIS team is always happy to do refresher trainings at any time. Now that I've covered how to make sure that your clients appear on the number next list in Clarity, we'll go into how to access the list in the new system. So first, you will need access to the agency analysis account to access the number next list in Clarity. If you've never heard of this or you don't have access, please contact your supervisor. They may need to speak with the HMIS team regarding access. If you don't have access to this account yet, I would encourage you to still listen into this training because we will cover some workflows that do not require the role. Okay, so I'm here in the Clarity system now. I'm on my home screen, and to access the number next list, first thing you want to do, as I mentioned, is make sure you're logged in to your agency analysis account that has been given to you by your supervisor. The second step is to make sure that you're in the Partners in Care agency. So when you click on this drop down next to your name, you want to make sure you're in Partners in Care. Next, you're going to click on the bento box and look for reports and click that. And it'll bring you to this page. In order to access the number next list, you're going to have to go over here to data analysis and click it. Now that I'm on this screen under data analysis, I'm going to move down to coordinated entry. And this is the Oahu individual coordinated entry dashboard, otherwise known as the individuals or singles number next list. So in order to open the dashboard, I'm going to look for this run button. I'm going to right click it and click on open link in new tab. So that's a unique feature with Clarity. You can have multiple tabs open at a time. For the purpose of training, I do have an individual's number next list already loaded. So we'll use this one. And I want to just first cover some of these columns, which you may already be pretty familiar with, but we do have client full name. We have if they're on hold or not. We have their unique identifier. We have the interviewer's name or the person that completed the VI SPDAT along with the agency that that provider is with. There's a column for actively enrolled programs. So which programs is the client currently enrolled in? Maybe that's an emergency shelter or street outreach program. Next is the active care team members column. This will list any providers who are currently part of that client's care team in Clarity, whether that's through a manual entry under the client profile or on the care team through their program enrollments. And we will cover that in a separate training video on care teams. The next column here is the health plan name that the client has been reported with. You'll see here that there is a verification column, which the health plans use to help with data collection and data accuracy. But this is helpful for providers to see and make updates accordingly if your clients have switched any plan. The most recent number next list case conference assessment date. We will cover what a number next list assessment is and how to complete that shortly. And now I'm over here, and these are some of the columns that you're probably familiar with if you're listening and have been participating in number next. The recommended resource, case conference status, if that person's engaged or missing, status notes, so where that person's located, who's working with them, any most recent updates about their status, and then the barriers and next steps. And if I scroll over further, you'll see some transparent data here. We have level of intervention, so what housing pathway the client is on, their VI SPDAT score on their most recent VI SPDAT assessment, if they are chronically homeless based on the information we have in HMIS, a count of the HUD disabling conditions that the client self-reported, client age, And that's pretty much it for now. I would encourage any provider that's listening to really get familiar with these columns and with how this new list is going to operate. I'm going to move on and show you some of the filters here at the top. So you may have already noticed that I have the list filtered for just some partners in care staff. I have myself, Bryn, and Morgan here. So what this is doing is it's filtering my number next list for Bryn, myself, and Morgan, and it's only showing the clients whose care team we are part of. So what I'm going to do is show you how to add more people to this list. Let's say maybe you're a street outreach program and you want to filter the list to see your whole team, right? You want to see, okay, I have a team of case managers. I'm going to add them all to this filter so I can see how many people we're working with, how many care teams we're part of for each, client that we're working with. So I'm going to go ahead and add Michael. You can do it that way by typing in a person's name. You can also click on this drop down and just find that provider that you're looking for. Once you do that and you add a new person to the list, I'm going to click out of that and you'll see that nothing has changed. My list hasn't reloaded. So my next step then is to click on this blue update circle and that will refilter my list. So we'll give that a moment to load. And the next thing I want to cover while that's happening is the interviewer's name that collected the VI SPDAC. This is another filter that you can use. What this will allow you to do is choose your name or even a staff member on your team's name and see the VI SPDACs that they've completed. So that will allow you to filter in that way. Something that's helpful about filtering for these things are, maybe you are working with 10 clients and it's only showing you 4 that are assigned to you. It will allow you to fill in those gaps and figure out, okay, maybe I need to go into my other 6 clients' profiles and make sure I'm added to their care team, because you want to be in the loop when CES makes a referral to a housing program, whenever there's any changes or any kind of coordination that needs to happen. It's really important that you are on that care team if you're actively working with a client. So I've covered how to access the number next list under the agency analysis account that has been given to you by your supervisor. And I've shown you how to familiarize yourself with the columns and how to filter the list to only view the clients that you're working with. We're going to go into topic number 2 now, and that's an overview of the number next list case conferencing assessment. So I'm going to cover the purpose of the number next list assessment and understand how to access the number next list and how often it should be updated. So what is the purpose of the number next list assessment? The number next list assessment data is going to pull directly into the number next list dashboard that I just showed you. Providers are now going to use the number next list assessment to update the following. So status and status notes. Where is the client located? Are they missing or engaged? Holds. So providers can now put their clients on hold or take them off of hold through the number next list assessment. Next steps and barriers is another piece that you can update through the number next list assessment, and other factors that I'm going to cover shortly. So a few really important things to note. Please do not update a past number next list assessment. Instead, always complete a new number next list assessment if you would like to update your client's information on the number next list. Completing a new number next list assessment is an effective way to track your encounters with the client and allow the whole system to see changes over time. The data from the old assessment will auto-populate into the new one, so you don't need to worry about losing history or having to copy over old information into that new assessment. Okay, now I'm here on the Clarity homepage, and I'm going to show you how to complete the number next list assessment in Clarity. So first things first, you need to make sure you're in the Partners in Care agency here at the top right. And the next step is to go into that client profile who you'd like to update their information for on the number next list. So my client is right here in my recent searches. I'm going to click on the client's name and get to their profile. Next, I'm going to click here on Programs at the top, and I'm looking for that active coordinated entry program enrollment. Next, I'm going to click the Edit pencil beside this enrollment, and then I'm going to move over to Assessments at the program level. Now that I'm here, I can scroll down and I can see that there have been a few different number next list case conferencing assessments completed for this client within the last month or so. So again, you do not want to go and edit one of these. You want to keep all this history here. You want to see all the assessments you've completed so that you can see changes over time and keep that history. To complete a new assessment, you want to be here at the top. I'm going to look for number next list case conferencing assessment. And the way to know that you're completing a new one is that you're clicking start each time. You're starting a new assessment. I'm going to select start. And that's going to bring me to the assessment itself. So as you can see, the old assessment data is already here for me. And all I need to do now is update that information. Of course, if you had a blank assessment, you'd kind of be starting from scratch. But for the purpose of the training, I'm going to show you how to edit information by completing a new assessment. So assessment date, it's going to auto-fill today's date for me, and that is what you want. For status, if I click this drop-down, you'll see the other options here. So engaged, not engaged, missing, or needs CES exit because maybe they have resolved their case and they no longer need assistance through CES. So we're going to say that this client is still engaged, and status notes looks like Brandy left one here and it says engaged with weekly check-ins as of 8/28/23. Client is open to services. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this date to 9/12/23. This is just an example. You can put anything pertinent to the client status, maybe their location, if you're outreaching them, whatever it may be. For this case, I'm just going to say that pretty much nothing has changed on this front with the status notes. The client's engaged. We're still checking in weekly as of today. Client is open to services. Next here is the hold option. So if you have a client that you need to put on hold for CES referrals for any reason, you would use this toggle and just click it on. For this client in particular, they are not on hold. They're ready for housing. They're open to services, so I don't want to put them on hold. Next is, as a provider, which resource would you recommend for this household? So right here is medium-term rapid rehousing. That's what's been selected from the last assessment that was done. But for today, I am actually going to change the recommended resource because I talked to that client and they said they're actually open to either rapid or transitional. They are going to take whichever one comes available to them first. This information is going to pull directly into the number next list that I showed you in real time once I save this assessment. Next is chronic homeless verification. This is for CES use only, so please don't worry about this and don't change the information. That is just for CES to use when verifying those documents. The next two are for providers. This is the barriers and next steps. So for this client in particular, it looks like they're unable to navigate stairs. That's a really important piece for CES to know. It helps the housing program know what the criteria is for that client. And then next steps are to complete chronic homeless verification and disability verification, and the provider's working on employment verification. So those are just a couple of examples of some barriers and next steps that you as the provider can list and update CES on through this assessment. Next two here are AMHD and CCS coverage. So I'm clicking on these, and as you can see, nothing is changing. That's because this information is from the VI-SPDAT itself. It doesn't get updated on this number next list assessment, but we felt it was important to include here in the assessment because we want it to pull in to the number next list. Next is for families. So this is reunification status. There's nothing written here because this is not a family who is in the situation of reunification or having a CWS case. But one thing I'd like to mention here is if you see notes in this box that have been left by Epic Ohana, CES, or CWS, please just don't change those notes. It's important to keep that history there. And this will only apply to certain clients. So just want to make note of that. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And the last is for veterans only as well. I wouldn't worry about this unless you are working with veterans specifically. Once you've completed this assessment, you're going to click Save and wait for confirmation. So my changes have been successfully saved. Just for the purpose of training today, I'm going to click back on the Assessments tab and just show you what this looks like now. If I scroll down, this is my assessment history. What this is telling me is there's an active individual VI SPDAT that was completed on July 10th, and there have been 1, 2, 3, 4 number next list case conferencing assessments completed since then. So this is great. This is showing that that provider is consistently leaving updates when there are changes to their client's case. And that is exactly what CES recommends. Whenever there's a change or there's an important piece of information pertaining to that person's housing, please complete a new case conferencing assessment. The data from the most recent assessment, the one that we just completed, is what's going to now populate to the number next list. So just to show a couple of columns, for example, if I scroll over here, recommended resource, that's something that we changed on that assessment we just did. So first, they were recommended for medium-term rapid rehousing. We, on that assessment, changed the recommended resource to rapid or transitional. Case conference status didn't change. For status notes, we did change a little bit of information there, so that would update automatically to this list. The barriers and the next steps are going to pull in right from that assessment. All of that information pulls in directly from the assessment that we just completed. So again, a couple important things to note. Please do not go down here and edit an old assessment. Anytime you have updates for a client on the number next list, go ahead and click Start and complete a new assessment. So that is the end of today's training session. We did an overview of the number next list, covering the purpose of the list itself, learning how to access the list in Clarity, familiarizing yourself with the columns, and then learning how to filter the number next list to only view the clients that you're working with. And then I also did an overview of the number next list assessment, why it's useful, how to access it in Clarity, and how often it should be updated. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions, please email the CES team at pickhousing@coordinatedentrysystem.org.